Welcome, everybody. I'm Ray Bittigan. This is PPF, for anybody who doesn't know that already. But with that in mind, I'd like to know if there's anybody here tonight that is a guest. I'd like to spend a little minute having you tell us about just introduce yourself. You don't have to go too far. Is that Mercedes?
Yes, it is. Yes. Rita has introduced me to your group, and whatever you want to know, I'll let you know. I don't know what you want me to know.
Do you feel like telling us about your photography a little bit?
I don't
Okay.
do any photography. I'm just here to watch.
That's perfect. Welcome.
Well, she's a little bit shy, but if I could just add that Mercedes has been my Spanish teacher for 14 years.
Oh, right on.
And she's a much better Spanish teacher than I am a student. But she is patient and knowledgeable and has gotten me into lots of interesting situations. Also made it possible for me to find my way into the bathroom and to order another beer while I was on the Camino de Santiago 3 different times.
Right on. Well, welcome, Mercedes. I'm glad you're here.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Is anybody else here tonight a guest that's not a usual attendee to PPF? All right. Well, it's nice to have members. It's nice to have guests, and I'm glad you're all here. Tonight we're going to have presentations by 3 of our members, and they're going to be about 30 minutes each. And before that, we're going to have our monthly challenge. And the monthly challenge is an opportunity for folks to send in 4 pictures is what we have it set up as now, and we make them into a slideshow. I'm going to encourage maybe everybody next month to send in a few more so the slideshow will last a little longer. But I encourage everybody to participate if you can. It's a great way to have your work displayed to the group, and it gets a chance for you to see your work while it's being viewed by some of your peers. And everybody's very kind, so there's nothing to worry about. It's a win-win situation. So when you see that newsletter and that call for the monthly challenge, I encourage you all to step up and give it a try. I'm wondering if any of you have something you would like to announce about yourself. If you got an upcoming show, you're teaching a workshop, you just won some award or got yourself into an exhibition we should hear about. Anybody got anything happening?
I've got a show coming up.
Oh, good.
It's going to be at the Walters Cultural Arts Center in Hillsborough. It should be called About Time because it was scheduled to be exhibited in April of 2020, and we all know what happened, and so they have rescheduled it. It's called Fire and Ice, and so I'll have 37 photographs on display. It's a juxtaposition of the photographs I took of ice in the gorge and thermal areas in Yellowstone. It starts on April 5th and runs for about a month and a half. And Hillsborough has first Tuesday art walk. So I'll be there at least on the first Tuesday on April 5th. So I hope if people live out in that area, you'll be able to come by and take a look and say hello.
Good. And where is that again?
It's the Walters Cultural Arts Center. It's on Main Street in Hillsborough.
Okay.
They have a parking lot, easy to find.
So Dawn, this goes for you and everybody else who's got stuff coming. Send me the, if you're interested in having the announcement on Instagram, send me the particulars and your artist statement for your show.
Okay.
And at least 2 or 3 images from the show so I can have a choice of images to show.
Perfect.
Sure.
Hey, Robert, can I put you on the spot for a second? And is the OSA thing happening?
Yeah, we still have time to exhibit photos in next month's photography show at OSA. As of last Wednesday, there were only 20 entries. So we need some more. I think in the watercolor exhibit this month, there were 90 entries. So,
Wow.
uh,
So the photographers aren't carrying their weight.
What is the theme?
exactly. Painting with light. I think that you don't have to stick too closely to the theme. And Giannis Miglos is the juror. And there will be a reception on the first Thursday of April.
And the deadline is what, the 4th or something, or
25th.
5th?
25th.
25th.
The 20th. Yeah, I think if you get it in by the end of the month, I think it probably will be fine. I think usually they have Monday and Tuesday as the drop-off days, and then Wednesday the exhibit is put up on the walls, and then Thursday is the first Thursday reception.
And can you remind the PPF folks what their discounted entry fee is? Do you remember?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think it's like
It's
$35.
It's 35. It's the same as OSA members.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Thank,
Ray Beaverton Art Mix entries opened up today too for anyone that wants to display there.
what is that?
Be a hybrid this year, and I guess they'll actually be having physical hangings up as well as having them online.
And this is the Beaverton Art Mix? What is that exactly?
Beaverton Arts Mix, it's the Beaverton Art Show.
Oh, gotcha.
It's
Never
like
heard of it.
in September, October.
Okay.
So Joe, is that going to be in the new art center that they just built?
I don't know. I didn't read it that
I
carefully.
believe it is.
That would be kind of cool. Usually they have it in the library.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's-
well, they have that new art center there by the round. Yeah.
And it used to be called I think the Beaverton Showcase.
Oh, I know.
And last few years, it's Beaverton Arts Mix.
So Don, did you get your Japanese calendar photos in?
I did. I had some problems. WeTransfer just didn't seem to work. I almost had to hand carry them over to the garden to get them in this year.
So is there, you guys
mine
talking about,
is
is there some kind of competition for the calendar at the Japanese garden? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
I don't think, does anybody else participate in that?
I have a few photos showing at the Happy Valley Library Gallery, part of the Clackamas County art program in April, starting in April.
Nice. And how did that happen? How did you end up
Well,
participating in that?
Clackamas County, you have to live in Clackamas County. And it has a art, excuse me, I got to get rid of the dog.
Is that your dog?
Yeah.
Hopefully.
I don't know what said wrong. Anyway, Clackamas County has an art program. They have 16 venues and they rotate them through the year, and you apply to be a participant, and they select, it's not just photography, it's any kind of art form. It could be sculpture or two-dimensional art. And they select who, and they tell you where they want you to show. Last year and the year before, I showed last year at the county offices in Oregon City, and the year before at Providence Milwaukee Hospital. But unfortunately, it was COVID. Nobody came.
Oh, no.
And those that came had to be tested and wear masks and the whole business. So it was a waste of time, actually.
Well, better luck this year.
Yeah.
Right on.
Ray, I have something, several people know about this already, and Philip was kind enough to post it on the website. So if you need to find the link, I have an article. It's not really an article, it's an interview of me for a change. I'm usually interviewing other people for articles that I write, but it's on a website called the Photographer, which is, I think it's a fairly well-known website that really is there to, review gear. They review cameras and lenses and things like that, but they also have an inspiration section where they interview photographers who have series that they want to show. So that's up right now. If you want to go to the PPF website, and I think it's under news to find the link.
That's a great art. I read it. It's a great interview. I recommend it.
Thanks, Ray.
Yeah. Anybody else got something happen they want to tell us about? Pat?
Yeah, I'm joining 2 other people with the exhibit up at Lightbox in Astoria. Robbie McLaren and Ken Hofield. I hope I'm saying that right. Hofield, yeah. Some of my images from the book, from the Columbia book, and the other 2 are we're all doing images from the Columbia River. So that's going to be up for a month from April 9th through May 11th.
Would you mind sharing with us how you guys arranged that?
Michael.
You asked him or he asked y'all?
I approached him after, talking to you and everyone about the images that I had. I believe he already had these other 2 going on. So he asked me to participate as well with that. So the entire gallery will be taken over with images from the Columbia River. And I believe, sorry?
When does that open, Pat?
It opens April 9th.
April 9th. Okay, send me the particulars. I've got Ross's already. I'm waiting for Dawn's now, and you.
Okay.
Great. I mean, Robbie McLaren's a friend of mine, and you're a friend of mine. Yeah, it should be a great show.
Yeah, I'm really happy to be able to be part of this.
Nice.
So
Matt, does he frame the images for you, the photographs for you?
I think he works it on multiple ways. I decided to go ahead and frame mine. I'm not sure how the other 2 artists are doing it. I think Ken actually does his own framing, but again, I'm not sure. Michael will print for you if you want to as well.
Yeah, he'll print, Matt, and frame for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ken has a frame shop, I think.
Yeah, I already had multiple frames that I've used in the past for small collections. So I'm just enlarging that a little bit.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'd like to announce a show that's coming up at the Viewpoint Gallery next month. It's called Art from Art. And I was lucky enough to get a picture in. And so my picture is of a mural with a couple in front of it. It was taken down in Oaxaca. And so I think a lot of the people, however they interpret that, will be, it'll be interesting. I do know one person that's putting in a picture that got in. It's an encaustic picture where she used a composites, and I'm a little bit familiar with the encaustic, but it's a whole different process. And so it should be an interesting show. And I believe it opens the 2nd week of April. And I don't remember the exact date, but I can I'll get that to you, Pat.
Okay, and, you're Kathleen Grady, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I see just Kathleen there, but I just guessed.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I sometimes don't put my full name. I don't know why, but sometimes I just do my initial. Anyhow, I will, when the show opens up, it'll be online. So I know you people aren't going to be able to visit the gallery. It's quite a trek. So since I'm in Sacramento.
California.
So it'll be interesting, I think. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
A lot of fodder for Instagram coming up. That's good.
Nice. Anybody else got something they want to talk about?
Just remembered something else I'm involved in. Hamilud Paper and Pro Photo Supply collaborated on a postcard project. And basically, I think 30 of us are doing this, and we send in an image. They're going to print them on the Hamilud paper. And so we'll kind of do, it's kind of like a Secret Santa thing. So I'll get an image postcard from somebody and they'll get one of mine. And I guess they'll have them on display at Pro Photo for a month or so. And I think they'll have them on an online gallery as well.
Nice.
So is Pro Photo mailing that all around, Joe? Is that how it goes?
It just to the 30 people. So it's just a kind of an exchange thing.
So you get 30 postcards?
No, just one, I think.
Oh, just one.
Yeah.
what are they gonna do with the rest?
Well, I mean, everybody gets that, and so they'll print. So they're going to print 3 copies,
Okay.
and so I get a copy. Somebody else gets a copy of that. I get one from somebody else, and then they're going to post all 30 of them up at Pro Photo Supply.
I see. I thought you were, because typically when those print exchanges, you make 30 of them and everybody gets a whole set. But that would be a lot of postcards in the mail.
I don't think they're printing that many. No.
Yeah. Okay.
Even if they have free paper.
No such thing as a free lunch, as you know.
Yeah.
Okay. How about if we have a look at the photo challenge? I think it's about 8 or 9 minutes. I can't remember. Again, I really have a hard time with the royalty-free music. So you're going to have to kind of create your own tune behind this thing. The slides are going to go on their own. Next month, my hope is I have a friend whose 13-year-old son is a piano protege for real. And he's going to make me a little bit of music that I can have the rights to, that we can use behind all kinds of things. So by next month, the monthly challenge will have music, but for this month, we're going to go with bring your own music. All right. And again, I encourage everybody to participate in this. This is a fun way for everybody to see your work. I'm assuming you all can see that, right?
Yes.
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 Oops. What the heck?
Uh-oh, it's stuck. Well, is it stuck for everybody? No, there it goes. So thank you to everybody that sent in. And thank all the rest of you for looking at those.
Hey, Ray, I sent in 4 photos.
You know, I didn't see them. Did you send them to the submissions address in the newsletter?
Yeah.
I am sorry, Dawn.
Yeah. Ray, I did also.
Me too.
Yeah.
Three of you.
Yeah.
I am sorry.
Check your junk folder.
I guess I need to, and I am sorry, three of you. I'll put you in the, I can't get them up right now, but I will put you in next time.
It's all right.
Please don't think that is a reason not to submit again. I didn't do it on purpose. Thank you though for the ones that did submit and the ones who I did remember to put. I didn't forget you. I just didn't see them somehow. It must not have come through right. Okay. Now we're going to do our 30-minute presentations by our 3 members. And the first one on the list that I was provided by Pat and that crew is Tim Dallas. Are you ready to go, Tim?
Yeah, I think so. I wasn't expecting to go first, but
well, you're first on the list.
Okay,
my little list.
No problem.
Thank you.
Yeah, actually, my wife Barbara's joining me here because we're watching our new puppy to make sure he doesn't get into trouble. But I think we'll be okay.
And Rita, just so you know, you'll be next, so you won't be surprised.
Okay, this. Well, first of all, thanks for allowing me the opportunity to show some of my photos. These are photos that I took a very long time ago while I was serving in the Army in Vietnam, and they're specifically of MedCap, which stands for Medical Civic Action Program. I was a little ambivalent about showing photos of this old. You know, I had no training or experience at the time I took them. I was 21 years old, and war subjects can be a little touchy sometimes, but I haven't used these photos until just very few years ago. I found as I was going through them, they were much more important to me today than they had been years ago. I think there's a historical perspective that people view them with now that they can appreciate it a little bit more. I've had some pretty good success exhibiting these photos in galleries. And the bottom line, what I was trying to do is tell a story about my experiences and a war story, not a war story so much, but just a story that's different than is typical of a lot of the Vietnam stories, movies, and books that people may have seen or read. So I'm going to give a couple minutes of a little background, kind of how I got to this point. So I'll share the screen here. Can everybody see my grandfather there?
Yes.
Okay. This is my grandfather. He was probably my initial inspiration for photography. I didn't even know what photography was back then at this point. He was an amateur photographer, and he had a little darkroom in his garage, and he took pictures of family, and I was always impressed by that. When I was 8 years old, he gave me a Brownie box camera, and I started shooting some pictures of family myself, and this is actually the very first photograph I ever took in my life. When I was 16 years old, I got one of these, and if you're old enough, you probably had one. They're very popular in the 60s. This is the camera that I had when I went into the Army a couple of years later, and then also that I took with me when I went to Vietnam. When I first arrived in Vietnam, I guess culture shock was kind of an understatement of how I felt. But I realized right away that I wanted to try to record as much of my experience as I possibly could while I was there. I realized that my Instamatic 100 wasn't going to cut it for the most part. I noticed a lot of the guys had cameras. Some of them had the larger SLR cameras at the time, Canon, Minolta, the Nikon F, which I actually bought. This is the one on the right here. And I just had it sent directly home because I was afraid it was going to get ruined over there. So what I ended up doing is getting one of these. This is a Konica. I was often kind of loaded down with a lot of equipment, and I just couldn't carry a big camera around. So this easily fit in my pocket, and I could get to it easily. So it worked out really well. So I spent the next year just photographing as much as I could when opportunities arose. I photographed my friends. I photographed military operations, even a little bit of combat action. I flew a lot in helicopters and fixed wing airplanes. So I like to take pictures of the landscapes that we flew over. But probably the thing that I enjoyed the most was taking pictures of people. Whether it was in Saigon, which I got to a couple times, on base camp or out in the remote villages, and especially on the MedCap operations. When I got back from Vietnam, though, I realized that it was not popular to be a Vietnam veteran at all. I didn't think anybody would have any interest in my stories, any interest in my photography or anything. So I basically bought myself my first new car, started growing my hair long, went back to college, just stuffed my photos away, and that was the end of that for a long time. Fast forward several decades, and I was converted to digital pretty much, not only photographing digitally, but I started scanning a lot of the negatives and slides that I'd taken over the many years before. And I pulled out my Vietnam negatives and slides, and I realized that a lot of them were becoming pretty deteriorated. The emulsion was starting to break down. So I wanted to preserve them, so I scanned them all. And in that process, I got the idea of maybe I could put something together in the way of an exhibit that might be of interest to people. So I was living in the San Francisco Bay Area at the time. I submitted proposals to a couple of the galleries in the area, and they were both accepted. I did one exhibit in 2017, did another one in 2018. We moved to Oregon in the, I guess it was the fall of 2018. Then in 2019, I was interviewed by the Happy Valley News as part of a monthly veterans series that they did. And as a result of that, the city of Happy Valley wanted me to exhibit the photos in their city hall. That was scheduled for, I think it was May of 2020. And again, for obvious reasons that were mentioned before, that never happened. As far as I know, they still want it to happen at some point, but I really don't know when. So in the interim, during COVID and all, I did a couple things. One, I finished a book that I was putting together for my two daughters, really. I just thought they might be interested in a more broad discussion of my experiences in the military. My younger daughter particularly wanted me to do that. And the other thing I did was put together a slideshow of the photo exhibit so that I could show family and friends. And that's what I'm going to show tonight. There's a couple problems. Let's see here. Let me get. Should pop up all right. Again, when I first put this together, I had a soundtrack that I put with the slideshow, but because a lot of those clips are not licensed, and this is going to be recorded and put on the internet, I had to delete the soundtrack. And then I also, as I was testing this, found out that my slide transitions don't work real well on Zoom. So I had to scrub those too. So anyway, I'm going to show this anyway. I think all the pictures will be okay. So I'll go ahead. On the 4th of July, 1969, I went to Vietnam as a soldier in the U.S. Army. I was assigned to the 25th Infantry Division Headquarters Company, known as Tropic Lightning. Although the war's success was measured primarily on the number of enemy killed, or what we call body count, the effort to win the hearts and minds of the people of Vietnam was gaining importance in the overall military strategy. Major General Harris Hollis, our division commander, spoke of the need to maintain a positive and harmonious relationship with the Vietnamese armed forces and civil populace in order to execute the combat mission in the most efficient and economical manner. Without honor, integrity, and compassion, we are nothing. Like everyone, my main goal in Vietnam was to survive, but to also do the most good I could under the circumstances. Because of the shifting war strategy, I became very involved in the Medical Civic Action Program known as MedCap. The objective was to improve the health standards and living conditions of Vietnamese people on site within villages. From a historical perspective, MedCap was not a long-term success. However, it gave me the opportunity to interact with villagers and help people on a very personal level. I still hold some of those relationships close to my heart today. Okay, I think I'm still doing okay on time.
You got some more time, yes.
There's a few more photos that I was going to show.
Please, yeah.
I might find interesting. 2 weeks after I arrived in Vietnam, Neil Armstrong went to the moon, and that was a really big deal for us over there. It was a real morale booster. And then 6 months later, Christmas of 1969, he came with Bob Hope with his Christmas show to our base camp, and I got a chance to go, which was pretty exciting. I had heard a lot about Bob Hope's tours of military bases every Christmas for years and years, starting in World War II. So it was really an incredible opportunity. He brought some really incredible celebrities at the time with him, and I was, after the show, got around behind the stage area and got photos of a lot of them. You may remember Connie Stevens. She was an actress and a singer, and I did some back checking to see where they are now, and it turns out she's still alive. She's 83 years old, living in Southern California. Theresa Graves, she was an actress and a singer, and she starred in a TV show called Get Christy Love. Unfortunately, she died in 2002 in a house fire at age 54. Suzanne Charney, she's an actress, a dancer, and now a sculptor. She lives in Southern California, and her sculptures celebrate dance. And then Eva Ruber-Steyer was Miss Austria and also Miss World in 1969. She's a model and an actress. She starred in a number of the original James Bond movies, and she does metal sculpture today, lives in Europe. And then if you remember, if you're old enough, the Dean Martin Show, which ran on TV from 1965 to 1974, had a troupe of young dancers and singers called the Gold Diggers. And for 3 years in a row, they came to Vietnam with the Bob Hope Show, and this year they also came. I found out when I was putting this exhibit together that they actually had a website and a Facebook page still. And I checked that out, and I sent them these pictures. Jackie Chidsey, who is one of the lead performers in the group, wrote me back and thanked me for the photos. I wrote her back again and asked her if she could identify all the other gold diggers that had come, and she did. So now I had the names of all of them. In the lower right-hand corner picture, the ones that are circled, every once in a while they'll post pictures or happy birthday wishes to members of the Gold Diggers cast. And these came up not too long ago, and you can see they're still looking pretty nice today. And then I was in a pretty good location as they drove out, and I got a nice picture of Bob Hope on his way out. And that's our commanding general Hollis in the back seat. And then my favorite photo of all time, and probably one of my most prized, is Neil Armstrong. I was sitting right on the back of a truck. He drove by, I waved at him, he waved back and smiled, and I got this picture. So that's my favorite. So that is it. So I'll stop the share. Okay.
Those are wonderful.
Man. How long were you there, Tim?
Year, July 69 to July 70.
There's an old expression that comes to mind, which is F8 and be there. And not only were you there, but you were very present. I mean, those photographs are very connected. I think they're really beautiful.
That's what I was trying to do. I mean, like I say, I'd hardly done any photography at all. And I just, by being there, as weird and dangerous as it was, and not even knowing if you're going to survive from day to day, I just had this overwhelming desire to try to document as best I could in a reasonably artistic way. And I learned a lot just by doing it, trying to frame my photos a little bit better and capture the right moments and things. So I'm glad I did. I have hundreds of photographs, but the MedCap, where I got to really work with local people, was the most important thing for me by far. So that's what I wanted to feature in my exhibits.
Were you having a process there where you could get feedback along the way, or did you not did see them till you got back?
From Vietnam?
Yeah. Did you see them along the way there? Were you having a process in Vietnam? How are you?
Yeah, they were, I don't remember. We sent them somewhere and I think it was Saigon. And I think they were developed there. And so I could see the negatives, and sometimes I'd get little prints and stuff. And so I had an idea of what was happening along the way. But like I say, when I got back home, I just wanted to move on. So I just put them away and never did anything with them. But just later on, getting nostalgic as you get older and stuff, you kind of got them out and spent some time really working, cleaning them up. And I think it was worthwhile. I've gotten some really good feedback from the galleries that I showed them. I've gotten letters written to me, had a couple of college girls write letters saying that they were in tears and all that kind of stuff. So it had an impact. And a lot of veterans also came with their children, with their grandchildren. So that was really nice.
Have you been back to Vietnam, or do you have any desire to go back? And
yeah, I haven't been back. I don't know why, but I don't think I can. I've had friends that have gone back. I know it's totally different now. Maybe because it's totally different now, it's a little weird. I remember doing a little checking online, and there's a mountain called Nui Ba Den in our 3-Corps area. It's between the Cambodian border and Saigon. Fierce battles there. I flew by it lots of times and stuff, and it was just, terrible place. They have an amusement park there now, and that's so bizarre to me to go back and see that much change. I don't know. It would just feel so weird. So I don't think I probably ever will, but I don't know.
I think
Tim,
that was a beautiful personal document. I'm really impressed. The images and the way you put it together. I'm also impressed by how well you managed the scanning of that old film, particularly the color. What color film were you shooting?
I think it was, I shot mostly black and white. I think the slides were Kodachrome.
That's what's probably the case.
Yeah.
It's a bitch to deal with.
Yeah, I've noticed that Kodachrome slides, I have photographs that my grandfather took with Kodachrome in the 1940s, and they look perfectly beautiful today.
The slides will look beautiful, but the scans, something weird can happen in the scanning.
Yeah.
You did a good job.
Well, a lot of the emulsions, probably because it was done in Saigon, and I don't know how good a job they did. The emulsion was actually starting to break down. So I had to do a lot of repair work and repair scratches and things like that on them. But and some of them were kind of not really, didn't survive, but I had a lot that did. So
I doubt they would have processed the Kodachrome in Saigon, but you could have sent it there and they sent it out for processing.
Yeah, probably. I knew we had a process for doing it, and I didn't really know what it was. So, and I don't remember anyway. It was a long time ago.
That was a nice presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
It was a wonderful presentation, Tim. And if MedCap, the purpose of MedCap was to provide health care and also to win hearts and minds, then they sure found their man in you. I could tell from those pictures that you connected so well with the local population, the kids and to adults on up. It was just so obvious from those images. And it was just a real treat. My dad, I'm an Army brat. My dad fought in Vietnam in '68. He was there, and he brought back lots and lots of pictures too, but they were all, military pictures of his buddies and very few from the local population. So, I wish he had done more of what you did, which is just an incredible document of the time. So I can see how that show of yours is a success, and I hope it gets to be seen now that COVID is over.
Yeah, kind of hoping so. I have to say that, I really liked Vietnam, actually. And I mean, the country as a whole, not the war. And I really like the people. not the ones that were trying to kill me, but
Yeah.
everybody else. And I have to say that a lot of the people that I work with, my fellow soldiers and stuff, are just some of the most, they don't get, Vietnam veterans don't get the credit that some of them are due. I think they were some of the bravest, most compassionate people that I've ever worked with. And
Absolutely.
it's just a different story about the Vietnam War that I thought was important to tell.
Yeah, yeah. And I should mention too that my parents were huge travelers when they retired. They did go back to Vietnam. He did. I took my mother with him, and he was one of the best trips for him. So of course he had searing memories as well from back then, and it just was a very emotional trip for him. But he was so glad that he made it. So I hope you get the chance to do it if you feel up to it.
Think about it some more. I'll see.
Tim, how did you have any concern when you went to some of the villages that some of the people were Viet Cong?
Oh yeah. I mean, we went there. The first thing we did was, set up patrols around the perimeter of the area. I did a lot of that. I have a lot of pictures of that sort of thing too. It was generally, we never had any trouble during the daytime. I wouldn't want to be there at night, but during the day, things were fairly secure. We'd set up perimeters. We had former Viet Cong working with us, known as Kit Carson Scouts. We'd go out with them. They often spoke English, and so they would translate for us. We did a lot of intelligence gathering during the medcaps, where we'd go around to just talk to people. And actually, there's in the pictures, one of the people, his name was David Firestone. He was a captain, and he was a dentist. He actually had talked to our commanding general when he first got to Vietnam, which was around the time I did too, and talked to him about trying to gather intelligence and information from people while we were helping them. So there was an ulterior motive to some extent, but I was too young to care about that sort of thing. But anyway, when people are getting dental care that they never had before, they're pretty appreciative, and they tend to open up a lot. So.
Yeah, Tim, thank you very much for that. One of the things I regret, so I did 3 Vietnam tours, and I regret not having the camera with me. In fact, one girl I was dating broke up with me because I didn't have a camera. It should have been a good clue, but yeah, it's great that you were able to capture those images and have those memories.
Yeah, I am too now.
It sounds like you have a couple of more stories to tell in your photographs from the day.
Well, I took hundreds of photographs of everything. There's photographs that I would never show anybody, and I don't even know I still have them, but I wanted to show the ones that I thought were the most important to me, and that was the medcap and working with the local villagers.
Nice.
Beautiful.
I think that's probably the best Vietnam show most of us have ever seen.
Well, it's a little different probably than most.
Are you sure you weren't in the Peace Corps instead of the Army?
No, definitely not.
Thank you, Tim. Were you drafted?
I was about to, I think, and I enlisted to avoid that. So I had a little more choice of what I could do.
Okay.
And they sent anyway.
Thank you again. That was lovely. Very nice. Rita, you ready?
I think I'm ready, and I would ask everybody to be patient as I go online, and my Lightroom mentor, Pat Rose, may have to coach me into the beginning of the slideshow. So let's see how this goes and cross our fingers. We've been through this a couple of times. Pat, I'm not seeing the carrot.
Just pull your little cursor down there just above the.
Well, let's see. What if I?
Oh yeah, click on the screen first, Rita.
Okay.
Remember, we wanted to click on the screen.
Oops, hang on.
Can you enlarge the screen? Hit that green button up at the top right, top left, sorry.
There we go.
There you go.
Okay, well, that's the biggest challenge. Tim, I really appreciated your work, your images and all that you showed. I'm going to just show this image to say that on a personal level, I've been horrified by what has been in the media the last month. And I know that I'm not alone. I think that all of us have our own responses to this. The damage, the destruction, loss of life is gripping. But I know from having worked in a number of settings over 18 years that there's more to what people live with that isn't showing up, that these people are losing. And to me, it is their traditions, their daily rituals, the time-honored practices that they enjoy every day. And while the bombs and the shells are still falling, they haven't had a chance to process that, but refugees or displaced people will soon figure out that having that afternoon tea or whatever little ritual it is that they've always cherished is now missing. And that is the context in which I want to take you on a walking tour, if you will, and sometimes a tour from the bus or the van of 3 places that I've been to do international relief work. I am a retired now nurse anesthetist for 42 years, but the last 18 of my career, I was fortunate and quite blessed to have taken part in international work. So if the time is not on my side, I will skip the last city, and we're going to start first and revisit Vietnam.
Excuse me, Rita, did you want to hit your caret and then double click the L so it gets whatever we?
Oh, I would love to. I'm going to hit the caret and double click. Yes, there we go. Thank you, Pat. So way high on the map here, we are looking at Hanoi. And just off to the east or the right is Ha Long Bay and the Gulf of Tonkin, which the Ha Long Bay is a historic monument. Well, let's see, it's on the historic registry. Yeah, a heritage site. Yeah. And we had the pleasure of going there before we got started in our 2 weeks of work. One of the traditional ways people live here are on these boats, which, like all traditions or rituals, sometimes serve us well and sometimes don't serve us as well. And that's true in every country that I've been in and in the country I live in. So just remember this beautiful image, because in a couple of slides, I'm going to flash back. Here again, a bucolic scene, but it's actually a rice field that was most likely contaminated with Agent Orange. If the leaders of the group are accurate, and the people who led this group, this was with Operation Smile. This one man had been going for, at the time I served with him, about 15 years, and he continued on afterwards. So I take his word, and I am not trying to be academic. I'm not trying to be scholarly or political. This little tour we're going on in my hands is humanitarian, and in my own heart, a bit nostalgic, because none of the work I did was in a war-torn region. Rather, we're looking at some of the things that went on that left people with some changes in their life. And that's what life is, all about change. This is a rice field that's been, of course, harvested and dried and now chopped. Never one time did I see anyone working in a rice paddy that wasn't a female. And the majority of times that female had a baby on her back and was glancing up ever so often to look at livestock that was just out of view of this camera. So the women were exposed to whatever was dropped off in the field. Again, this is historically accurate and probably the stuff of legend, the busy, bustling streets of Hanoi, North Vietnam. This is just how it is. And the trick is walk right out in the middle of the street, but don't slow down. Don't change your pace, because that's the way the scooters know where you're going to be, and you never slow down to try to dodge them. They will change the speed of their cycle to not hit you, hopefully. Again, another bustling street, and I expect that a number of people know this building. This is the in Hanoi, the Hanoi Hilton, where John McCain was held for over 7 years. And people go by it and don't really pay it much attention. But of course, to Americans, it was gripping. And we wanted to go back and go in, but we weren't able to. So who did we take care of? Well, these are young people who were left with facial anomalies, birth defects, if you will. And we were going in to try to help to correct some of the asymmetry in order to turn them give them a life in which they weren't stared at. There is speculation that these facial anomalies were birth defects secondary to Agent Orange. There's no proof. Lots of academic studies, and I'm not quoting them. I'm just saying what we were told off the cuff. Didn't matter. We were there to help them. This young woman was treated by a local surgeon in a way that did not fill in the defect thoroughly, and the tissue that was placed there didn't survive. What Operation Smile was doing was taking a different sort of approach that I'll show you in a moment. And another person or category of unfortunate people that we treated were victims of domestic abuse, crimes of passion. Actually, I don't know another way to word it. We didn't go there to make this woman convert her back to her beautiful self. She had had acid thrown in her face by her husband, who she left. And it is not uncommon. I'm not going to say it's acceptable, but it is a known tool that spurned lovers often use. Now, we were going to help her with her eyelids. If you take a close look, they are definitely surgical, but without eyelids, and she didn't have really good function initially. Without eyelids, you can't blink, and if you can't blink, you can't keep your eye moist, and your eyeball will cease to thrive. So we were there to try to do something to protect her function and therefore her vision. Same is true with her nose. Her nose, yes, it's nice to have the nose. It's better than it was. But what this also does is later in life, support her eyeglasses. She had no notion that that was going to be coming in her life. But so the next category of patients we took care of were lesser than the first ones, but this was a burn injury with a young girl who lived in one of the little boats, the houseboats, like you saw in the Halong Bay image. The burn scar is very limiting. As you can see, she can't straighten her arm. And in fact, up in her armpit, she's also got restriction, and again at her wrist. So it's a long procedure in which people lose a fair amount of blood. So there's just a limit to how much you can do at one time, especially in a hospital where you may or may not have a blood bank. So what did we do in this hospital? We took care of patients. The two surgeons who are sitting are with Operation Smile. The one in the blue plaid hat is the man who devoted probably 20 plus years to going into this hospital, the military hospital in North Vietnam, Hanoi. So he was revered, known, trusted, and was a great teacher. Patients loved him. So the man looking over his shoulder is learning, and the guy that is scrubbed in with them is a local. We were so blessed by the local support of our mission, because you can't possibly take enough people to do everything. And that's me 18 years ago, giving an anesthetic, 20 years ago, I guess now. So what else did we do? We, again, more teaching. This time the standing surgeon is a surgeon who is local and advanced along his career, and gaining more from the experience with these experienced surgeons. Now, we always had translators, and the conversation among the three surgeons was projected to the people that were observing, so that they too got a little bit of information, perhaps that would not have been available to them had we not had the translator to tell the play-by-play, if you will. But along with taking care of patients and teaching, we also observed. And in observing, we see lots of spontaneous traditions or rituals or time-honored practices that wouldn't be seen in our country. Not that we wouldn't be doing other things, but nevertheless, this is not seen in our country, and it was very endearing, genuine friendship and affection. It was very cheerful to us. It was great. Again, another local that was helping us out. In most third world operating rooms, there are no, in fact, I don't think I've ever seen one, mechanical ventilators, which free up the hands of the person giving the anesthetic to be doing the other things, drawing up blood, drawing up drugs, hanging blood, whatever. So this lovely Vietnamese fella was our ventilator, and he was revered as well as the other fellow. So this is, the gal on the left is the one from the start who had the defect that had failed. This young woman by our Operation Smile team was given a new graft that was taken from her thigh with the blood supply. It was brought up to an incision and wound that had been created on her cheek, and the blood supply was restored. So she is sending her own blood supply through that little piece of flesh. It's deep. It's probably an inch and a half. So hopefully that took. The amount of swelling there is totally normal. That will go down. It will reduce, but this is like the day after surgery. Again, an endearing piece with no academic value, but many of the people have very long hair, and we get that old betadine soap in their hair. It's miserable to try to get out. So leave it to a nurse to get her braided and get that big long braid protected. At the end of a long day, it was wonderful to walk the grounds of this park-like setting, which just happened to be a military hospital in North Vietnam. You would never know it, but just to vent a little bit, because we saw a lot, we heard a lot, but we weren't there to sort out our own feelings. We were there to try to make things better, and I think we did. We were always in clear view of professional military support. So as young and as friendly as they are, they were ubiquitous, and we never had any question but what we were in a military setting. So quite the converse of being in Hanoi is going to Gimbi, Ethiopia. I traveled there with a group of people from OHSU up at here in Portland. If you look dead center of this map is Addis Ababa. That's the airport to which we flew in. And then take that little gray road out to the left, and for 200 miles, you will see Gimbi. Well, a 200-mile drive should only take, what, maybe 2 hours? That's going slow. But because the roads are so bad, it was an 8-hour drive. And the roads were rutted, rarely paved, and made for a real challenge for the van driver, who was good at it and did it every year for this same team. I don't know about you, but I love a good road trip, and most photographers will enjoy the opportunity to do street theater. This was street theater along that drive. This 8-year-old, again, it is a cultural norm. The jobs of running the farm and the family fall to everybody on the team, and that is the family. This little boy is roughly 8. I'm guessing. I didn't get to interview him, but he is herding this group of cows. They don't live close. They literally have come from a distance to find grass that's edible for their herd. Well, this was encouraging, we thought, road construction, because we're thinking now the next teams that come are going to be able to make that trip a little faster. easing the transport. But unfortunately, we learned again from the management of the hospital in which we were working that this road between Addis and Gimbi was being built by the Chinese in exchange for a bond to repay them, that the Ethiopians most likely had no way to ever repay in monies. So what it would end up doing would be they would be paying their debt with natural resources to the Chinese, which seems like not unreasonable, but not necessarily transparent, right? Again, it's not up to us. We were just hoping for a better road next year, but because in this road, only 2 layers of concrete are being poured, when the tradition or the conventional way of building a highway, I'm told, is to put down 3 layers. That wasn't being followed here. So we remain to be convinced as to whether or not this road was going to be something that would be usable for a very long time in the future. Okay, talking about a tradition or a custom that gets you in trouble later, I want you to remember this woman carrying a very heavy load, probably daily, for fuel. And yet another carrying this time wood, sharp wood sticks for firewood, cooking, heating. But after those 8 hours, we arrived in Gimbi, and this is the area to which we moved in for the next 2 weeks of working. And we're delighted because this was the view every morning when we gathered for our pre-surgery planning conference. Quite a view and quite a lovely breakfast. And off we would go prepared as a team, knowing what each person was going to be responsible for in that next, I don't know, 8 to 10 hours. So who do we take care of? Well, we took care of women who in Africa, women have multiple pregnancies close together, and over time, continuing to work with very little recovery, they are often plagued by the prolapse of their pelvic organs. Don't worry, I'm not going to give you too many details, but I will tell you that it cripples them in some functional ways. But they are so scared of dying while being treated that they put it off and put it off and put it off until they can't put it off any longer. And they've decided that it would be better to be dead than to continue to live with this crippling affliction. So that's who we were there to take care of. So they were not that happy to see us. They were scared to death, but then just delighted when they woke up. Women taking care of women. In the third world, there aren't any cafeterias in the hospital, so people will go out into the village and gather food. There are no laundry services, so people have to bring their own towels and not necessarily sheets. I don't know how these sheets get laundered, to be quite honest, but there is no laundry service. Always exciting in any venue, even in those rough pictures from Ukraine. The birth of a baby is always just a few minutes where everyone smiles and everyone feels hope. And this, I always take a picture wherever I am serving of a newborn baby. In third world hospitals, the most frequently performed surgical procedure is routinely a cesarean section. In Africa, most often because women in Africa, their skeletons are different and they have a smaller pelvic outlet. In our own country, I'm sure you've known someone who's had a cesarean section. Well, oftentimes it's because the pelvic outlet is a little small and the baby's head can't get through. So that's a common problem in Africa, leading to all sorts of issues. These are the people we took care of, strong, powerful women who decided that they'd rather risk dying than living with this pelvic prolapse. This woman is at puberty, was tattooed with the little marks there on her jawline as a celebration of the ritual of puberty and becoming a woman. And she's accompanied by her son. Interestingly enough, this woman has Maasai roots, even though the Maasai are generally in Eastern Africa, but here in Western Africa, it's known that Ethiopians have some Maasai roots. She's 6'2" tall. This woman reflects in her eyes the emotional suffering that is left with women who suffer what I think probably a number of the women in this group have probably heard of, called pelvic fistula, prolonged labors that are unsupervised by either a doctor, a nurse midwife, or a village midwife. Prolonged labors cause pelvic injuries that cause these women to leak their urine with no control. And ultimately they are ostracized and moved to what is like a leprosy village on the outskirts of their own village. She knows her heart is broken, that she fears that she has nothing to hope for. Her husband can leave her, her family can just spurn her as well. Well, she came to the operating room. It was not a complicated fistula. And the next morning we went to visit her. We didn't even have to ask her through the translator what she thought. Her eyes, her smile told us she was dry. She knew it before we knew it. I mean, we had hope. We thought that it was a successful repair. But when we walked to the bedside, this was her response. And we were all pretty tearful. This was our team of locals. They do very much with very little. And here's where they do it. In an operating room that is substandard by most anyone's yardstick of comparison. This bed, again, no linens, so that's a plastic wrap that is cleaned with disinfectant. They're very, very clean and very conscious of that, but just no linens. But they disinfect heartily between patients. What did we do? We taught. Besides taking care of patients, we taught. This is a Portland surgeon teaching one of the local surgeons who has to be pretty far along in his training career in order to grasp the tenets of this prolapse anomaly. And the OHSU nurses who came to work in the recovery room also taught. The eager local nursing students. It was beautiful. Okay, flashback to that heavy burden of sticks that often these gals will start as early as age 14, and they are left with deep scarring. I didn't know what it was, and I had to ask one of the operating room nurses because it looked so irregular and bizarre. That's what it was. Then this woman, if you look, you can tell from the neck on up to the head, she's not young. In fact, she's elderly. But take a look, if you will, at her spinal column. It is slightly curved. And this is after years, starting very young, years of carrying heavy burdens, whether it's wood or food or water for miles. So over time, she will develop chronic pain. She didn't have it at the time, but in this moment, in this day, the challenge was to me, could I get a spinal needle into the right location to give her an anesthetic for her operation when I'm looking at that curve? It went well. and I am proud. But anyway, she wasn't the only one that we had that. So these guys, again, flashing back to tradition and the culture, they were as helpful and as cheerful as they look. They translated every word we said to our patients who didn't understand us so that we could take better care of everyone by being sure we knew as much as we could possibly know about these women. So it was a beautiful gift they gave, but unfortunately, the culture is crippling these women. This is, my opinion, no one else's, because the women don't get to go to school and learn English. These young women, nurses who did get to go to school, are trying to give some overtime cuddling to a newborn baby who was born extremely prematurely. This is that same baby. On the second day of life, the mother was being told that she was going to feed this baby every hour in order to get the baby to gain weight and thrive. The mother said, I have 4, maybe 5 other children. I have a farm. I have animals. I cannot do this. She put her clothes on and she left. This is a little boy with a similar fate. He was struck by lightning, and the exit wounds left burns that had to be treated, cleaned up, what we call debriding, taking the dead tissue off repeatedly, once or twice a week for a number of weeks. And on this day, he's coloring, and he followed us around. He has not seen anybody in his family now in months, and the nurses were hopeful, but no clue as to whether or not anybody would ever come for him. So you might understand why at the end of each day, this generous, gracious woman met us with the delightful tradition of the coffee service. It was just our way to unwind a little bit and enjoy something so positive about where we were, and how lucky we were to see some of the good side out of a lot of sadness that we were dealing with. And I think, in the interest of time, I'm going to go back here to the full screen here like this and say that I moved fast. There's so much that I'd love to tell you, but I don't want to pass up the chance just in case anyone has a question or two about this. I'd love to have shown more slides, but I was going to try to get a third city in, but I think that's being a bully. So are there any questions, anything I can elaborate?
Well, I'd just like to say that the portraits especially are really gorgeous.
Oh, Johanna, thank you. This was not intended to be artistic, Johanna, thank you, because what we had to do because of the severe language barrier is to make sure we had an ID, because the surgeons would know what they needed to do, but we needed to make sure it was the right person. So wow. That's how that arose. So they were quite clinical, but the light was gorgeous. And yes. I thank you for saying that.
And the people are gorgeous. I was in that area in 50 some years ago, maybe 60 years ago, and pretty close to there in Gambella.
Oh, Rita, I have a question for you.
Yes.
So these are 3 locations that you went to over, extended period of time while you were still working in the United States. How did you get these
assignments?
The assignments. And how were the locations chosen for you? Did you choose? Did they choose?
Thank you for asking. You never choose. You can say no, but Operation Smile is the first group with whom I worked, but they took care of pediatric patients. And I had, over the first few years of my experience doing international relief, I stopped doing pediatric anesthesia, and I was working at the VA hospital, taking care of anything but pediatrics. So I knew that I was, not really in good stead to be doing pediatrics. So I moved on. And what happens is it's a small world, international relief, anesthesia, international relief, surgeons. There's sort of a known thing, like then going with OHSU, somebody said, oh, well, Rita Silent, she's done some international relief. So they called me and we all, we met, and it worked out real well. So that's how it goes. But I've been in Bolivia, Peru, Kenya, Haiti, the Philippines, a number of places. And it really is word of mouth. Somebody is assigned to, we say, go to work with the Catholic Diocese of Chicago and in the Philippines. And somebody drops out and they say, oh, well, I know, I got a friend who gives anesthesia and she does this, so let me call her. So it's a lot of word of mouth.
And how long were your tours typically?
Usually 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. I did, however, work 1 month in Hue, Vietnam.
Mm-hmm. Rita, I assumed that the Smile Project did a lot of cleft palate cases.
And you assumed correctly. But this one man who went back and forth to Vietnam over a 15, 20-year period was a reconstructive plastic surgeon. And in Hanoi, he had a heartfelt need to try to help these people who had been disfigured by what he suspected was an Agent Orange effect. Again, his take, not mine. So he went in to do what they called vascularized, just meaning blood flow, vascularized grafts to replace these defects. And it was just incidentally that he ended up also taking care of these women who had been burned so terribly with acid, and also children who had been in the houseboats and gotten burned. Because I just wanted to say that in the houseboats, when a fire kind of breaks out outside of the little stove where they heat their little cabin or they cook or make tea, many times they could just jump out, but sometimes they're not in a place they can. So that's when the real damage gets done.
Nice. Thank you, Rita. I mean, the story was heart-wrenching, but beautiful at the same time.
Thank you. And if anybody wanted any more details about the pelvic injuries and the pelvic fistula, it's a heartfelt thing for me to take care of women who really need what I'm trained to do. So I would love to give you more details, but in conference with my Lightroom mentor, Pat, we both agreed that I should probably go easy on details. It's all clinical to me, and I have to be so careful because it's all clinical and we've all got the same bodies. You know, it's like there's nothing mysterious, but we all think we are. But so anyway, if there are any questions, I would talk privately with anybody who is interested.
Thank you, Rita.
Thank you.
I do have a friend who just went through that, so I know it's very traumatic, like you say.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay, so I will stop my share.
Nice. Thank you.
Nicely done, Rita.
Thank you for your attention. I really appreciate it.
Especially to make pictures while you're actually there doing some other such major things. You know what I mean? You're not there to take pictures. You're there to do this other big role, but you still manage to make these meaningful pictures while you're there, I think.
You know, it's your heart dragging you around. You know, we've got a camera stuck on your back and your heart's dragging you around.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, I'd just like to say that with both Tim's and Rita's presentations, we've seen a marvelous collection of portraits, which personally for me are my faves.
Yeah, me too. I think photography was made for portraits in some ways. Andrew Greenhill, where are you? You're up next. You're the last one for tonight.
I'll share my screen. Today I'm going to present an exhibit I had last month at the Viewpoint Photographic Art Center in Sacramento, where Kathleen Reagan had mentioned she's showing some of her work in April. The opportunity came up because of the fact that we lived in Davis, California for 18 years, from 1984 until 2002. And we became very friendly with a woman who lived next door to us. And after we left, she married a man who is a docent at Viewpoint, and we've remained close friends over the last 20 years. And he has been anxious for me to submit work to Viewpoint because he thought that my photography was quite different from what he usually saw at the gallery. And so last summer, I submitted 2 projects, and the Solitude of Winter series was chosen. And this is the exhibit that I had last month. I'd like to give you a little bit of background in my photographic history. Many of you know it because I spent an hour a year ago, February, discussing how I got to where I am in photography. But just for those who are unaware, I've been interested in photography for most of my life, but whilst a commissioned physician in the Army from 1979 to 83, from 81 to 83, I was assigned to Fort Ord and the Silas B. Hayes Hospital, which is just outside of Monterey, California. And I fell in love with fine art, large format, black and white photography, where much of the work and artists thrived, including Ansel Adams and the Weston family, lived on the Monterey Peninsula in Carmel or Monterey or Seaside or Pacific Grove. And a lot of their work was from that area. And I spent the 2 years that I was stationed there trying to learn large format black and white photography. I built a dark room in my garage and did all the processing. I bought some used equipment. But when I finished my tour of duty at Silas B. Hayes Hospital, I retired from the military and went to practice as an allergist, immunologist, and within a year moved to Davis, where we spent 18 years as our children were growing up and graduating high school. And so that's how I got to the point where I was asked to submit work from our neighbor and friend, Johann Proust. So the exhibit is about the solitude of winter. And I spent the last 40 or so years interested in trying to express myself, but I didn't quite know how until the last 5 years or so ago. I tried to imitate other photographers. I tried somewhat successfully to do my own work in processing and printing, enlarging and printing photographs in the darkroom. I tried to do everything myself, including framing, matting and framing. And I was never really able, with my medical practice and with trying to be a good father and husband, to spend a lot of time in the darkroom. And there were long periods between when I could photograph and process because of the limitations of time in this situation. And it wasn't until 2010 and 11 when I retired that I was really able to spend a lot of time photographing. At that time, I switched from film to digital photography and spent a lot of time learning digital techniques, both photographing and processing. And I had the syndrome called GAS syndrome, gear acquisition syndrome and tried to get everything I thought would help me become a better photographer, and with an emphasis on detail and following the quote unquote golden rules of photography. But even though I could make pretty pictures, I really wasn't very happy with them because I wasn't really expressing myself. In 2017, I spent a year trying to figure out why I was attracted to photography. And at that time, I went on a workshop to the Yukon with Mark Kurgel, who presented a year ago, January, to this group and gave a couple of workshops on long exposure photography. And we clicked immediately, and he gave me several projects that really helped me clarify what I wanted to do with photographing and the creative side of photography. What I really wanted to do was express my feelings, thoughts, and memories. And I wasn't really interested in techniques that involved long algorithms or use of equipment that was specific for certain techniques, such as macro photography. I just couldn't get my head around all of the technique and rituals that I had to go through and most of the time they didn't really help with what I was trying to do. And so one of the projects was this, I have always been interested in minimalist photography, and I went on a number of workshops between 2017 and 2020 before the pandemic, to Canada, to the Yukon, to Alberta and Saskatchewan provinces during early February, when the weather was really cold and there were lots of snowstorms. I'm not one who likes cold particularly, but I was really attracted to the landscape there and trying to express my feelings about what I saw and the thoughts that I had associated with it. And out of that came this series called The Solitude of Winter. And I'll just read you the artist statement that I created for this exhibit. A photograph is an artifact of a moment as well as a metaphor. It's a symbol of something that is real as well as expressive. The metaphor in this exhibit is the feeling of solitude and peacefulness of winter landscapes. Even though the prints are literal scenes of minimalist winter landscapes, they are imbued with emotion. These photographs were created while in a contemplative state of mind, concentrating on my feelings and my thoughts, leading and converging lines, geometric shapes, patterns, and negative space. I used a mirrorless camera to pre-visualize the tones and structures of the composition. The viewfinder was set to see the composition in black and white, which facilitated composing the lines, shapes, and tonal juxtapositions in each scene. And now I'll go to the scenes. This photograph was taken actually in Norway on the Lofoten archipelago in March of 2018 or 19, I can't remember. I think it was 19. It was during a day where the weather was constantly changing. And at this time, there was a 20-minute blizzard. And we were sitting by a church that we had been photographing in the sunshine when all of a sudden the sky turned gray and somber, and then the snow came. And it blanketed all of the structures around this building. And there's a lot of detail here showing the snow falling. And it's not so much getting the detail as the feeling of being alone in this horizonless scenery. I decided when I created these prints that I wanted to have, since the scenes were large and very, I don't know the right word, they were just expansive, that I created large prints. This is one of the 2:3 aspect ratio prints. I made 15 of the 2:3 aspect ratio prints with the matted print being 24 by 30 inches. They were all done in high key, and I didn't frame them. I bought, for some of the images where the gallery didn't have plexiglass covers, I bought plexiglass covers with the size I wanted. And so they were frameless so that they expanded beyond the frame. This is a scene from the Calgary area of Alberta, of the rolling hills and rolling landscape with silos in the distance and everything pretty much blanked out by the snow and the gray sky. Here's a scene, what I consider a sensual scene of the landscape in this environment. This was a storm outside of Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, which I called Silent Storm. Many of you who have lived in snowy areas are well aware that oftentimes one wakes up and everything is blanketed in snow, and it's all done silently. There's no wind howling or rain pattering the windows or rooftop or hail. It's all occurs silently. And that's the way I felt about this image. This was on an expedition around the islands in the Arctic called the Svalbard Islands. And I love this person standing in his boat with the ice in the ocean and the landscape and mountain scene all kind of faded into the background. This was from the Calgary area of Alberta, and it was an abandoned barn during a snowstorm. And again, there's no horizon. you can't really differentiate the land from the sky. And again, it gives you this feeling of expansiveness. This is an image from Lofoten, and to me, it looks like a path to eternity. It just goes off into the distance. Whoops, I don't know how it skipped to the last. That was actually the last picture. A lot of you have seen this picture because I submitted it to for the 2019 book, PPF book. But again, it's being alone in the snow, and again, no differentiation between the sky and the land. And it's high-tech isolation. This is a road that's covered with ruts and snow and ice and rocks going off into the distance. Here's another scene of a barn in this environment, being alone.
Oh, that's gorgeous.
This is Home Sweet Home. Again, just an expanse of land. Here's another road. We have a close friend here in Portland who grew up in South Dakota. And when she saw these images, she initially felt the anger and frustration she experienced as a child being isolated and living in this environment, but then wanted this picture as a memory because it reminded her of driving home in the wintertime in South Dakota, and the trees in the distance reminded her of a town that she passed whenever she was driving back to her own home. Oops, I went the wrong way. Here's another landscape going off into the sky, and very soft and peaceful.
I love that.
This photograph I call the Sentinel Tree, being alone out there watching over the landscape. This photograph was of a cabin on one of the islands of Lofoten in Norway. And this is a picture, again, of the sea. This is one of the panoramas that I made, which were 20 by 40 inches. This photograph was made, I think, in the area around Saskatoon during a snowstorm of a silo. And what I really wanted to create was the feeling of the snow falling all around me, and really wasn't interested in details of the silo, but wanted to use the silo to bring out the snow that you couldn't see all around it, but with the contrast of tones became very evident. And again, the soft peacefulness and solitude of this scene. This is one of my favorite images, which I call Passing Me By. And it was again in the Saskatoon area, Saskatchewan. I was in a workshop with 8 or 9 other people, and they were photographing detailed of a abandoned farm right near this area. And I thought the scenes were interesting, but my eye got attracted to this, especially with the clouds overhead and the road passing by this farm with nothing around it except for the road. And I called it Passing Me By. Again, the being alone in this expansive environment. And this again was a panorama that was 20 by 40 images when matted. Whoops, sorry. This is another one of my favorites. This tree, again in the snowstorm. This was a road in Lofoten near where we were staying. And the night before it had snowed heavily, and we stopped here because I just was blown away by all the tones of gray and the feeling of the mystery about what we were getting into as we drove along this snow-covered road. And again, this was a panoramic image. So I think that covers the images, and I'll stop my share and answer any questions people have in the few minutes we have left.
So Andrew, did you have to enhance the sky to make it to that minimalist look very often, or was that how it mostly was presented to you?
Well, I had to touch it up occasionally, but a lot of the times it was very difficult to differentiate sky from land.
Nice.
Especially during an active snowstorm.
How did you guys get around in that?
We usually had SUVs that were four-wheel drive, or a truck that had four-wheel drive, but the drivers were extremely cautious not to get into situations where we couldn't get out of, and had lots of gear, ropes and chains and things. So, and we always had two vehicles, so one could pull the other out.
Andrew, I've never shot in such extreme conditions. How do you protect your equipment?
Well, we usually stayed out for only about 10 to 15 minutes because that's all we could tolerate.
Yeah.
My cameras and my brother Larry came on several, and at that time we had, I still have them, Sony A7 IIs, and the A7 IIs, if you stayed out too long, would get so cold that the battery would die, and nothing would work until it warmed up again.
Mm-hmm.
And when it warmed up, you had to reformat all your menus because everything was gone. So that was
a problem with condensation buildup.
Didn't really have that much trouble with condensation. My main problem was trying to use a camera with only lightweight gloves. I had glove warmers, the chemical packs as well as an electrical glove and vest and foot warmers, which were battery operated, but the hands never really got warm, and I'd often get totally numb and couldn't feel anything if I stayed out too long. And then I still have a little bit of abnormal sensation in the index finger on my right hand.
Wow.
Ooh.
That trigger finger.
Yeah. Mild frostbite, I guess.
And one more quick question about
Andrew,
I assume these were digital.
really-
Just a quick question first. I assume these were digital pictures. How did you got such white snow? How did you set your white balance? Did you get all that in camera? Did you have to process that to brighten it up?
As I mentioned, what I primarily do is I use black and white to see through the viewfinder.
Oh, right.
And I don't like messing with, I like to create the image the way I want to see it. Oftentimes it came out darker than what I really desired, so I had to brighten it in post-processing. But what I really wanted to do was create the feeling that I experienced and the thoughts that I had by seeing it in the flesh. And then sometimes I had to touch it up because the camera saw it differently.
Right. Interesting.
So Andrew, I'm very impressed with the harmonious nature of the set. And given that you took these pictures all over the place and at different times and so on, I'm really impressed with how consistent they look in terms of things like white balance, tonality, and so on. It's a beautiful set.
Thank you. I spent a lot of time and used a lot of paper trying to get things right. And I was very fortunate to have the help of Mark Fitzgerald, who has the best eyes of anybody I know to see details and tonal differences. So he came several times to the house and looked at the prints I was making, and I started with relatively small prints, putting 5 to 10 on a big sheet of paper. If you look behind me, I have a 24-inch roll paper printer that I produced all of them on.
Nice.
Would put a whole series on so that they all were printed at the same time. And then I could kind of work with each one and try to match them. And I went through maybe a 50-foot roll of paper.
Oh, geez.
Getting the tones right, because the tones will change as you enlarge the prints. The tones look darker and more contrasty when they're smaller. And then as you expand them, it changes. And so I often had to, once I got to the size I wanted, I often had to make 2 or 3 prints to get it the way I exactly wanted it.
Yeah. And for your sorry, go ahead.
Hi, Andrew. I just want to give you a shout out. Sorry, I'm in the dark. I like to look at my computer in the dark. This is Kathleen Grady. I saw Andrew's exhibit at the Viewpoint Gallery, and I want to tell you, it is to see his pictures in person. They're stunning. I mean, I was looking at these on screen and I was thinking, these are nothing like what I saw at the gallery. I mean, they are so stunning and just beautiful. I mean, in the emotional feeling that you get it's remarkable. So Andrew, I hope that you can show your work in Portland and do the same exhibit, because it was very well received by the people that at the show that I was at. I was at the receptionist for the artists, and I met Andrew, and it really is it's a beautiful, just a beautiful piece of work that you've done, and you should be very proud.
Thank you so much, Kathleen.
You're welcome.
I appreciated meeting you as well.
So when we meet in person, which may not be too far away, I hope we have the chance to see them, Andrew.
Yes.
Some of them
Just
anyway.
got them back on Saturday from Viewpoint. We're in the process of moving to a smaller house.
Oh.
And so I kept them in the boxes for the moving next week. But I hope to be able to exhibit them in Portland someplace, as well as show them in a live meeting.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right, y'all. Thank you, Andrew, very much.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, it was lovely to see those. Well, that's it for tonight, everyone. Like Pat alluded to, we might be got some things coming up here about the meeting in person at the MAC Club, but we'll be, or the MAC Multnomah Arts Center. We'll be in touch via the newsletter. So if you get something in the newsletter, have a look. We've got some stuff coming up. And after that, we'll say goodnight for tonight.
Good night.
Good show, you guys, you three people.
Sure like looking at all this beautiful stuff. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great reading. Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Thanks.